Alright guys, so let's talk about Tesla today and how it's going to be the biggest loser of the Trump trade war. Now countries all around the world, they are responding harshly to Trump's tariff war, and needless to say, global supply chains will never be the same. Countries, whether they like it or not, will be forced to turn inwards. Now economic blocs like BRICS, they'll begin trading with each other. Self-sufficient economies like China will focus on domestic consumption, and for the rest, the only solution left is massive retaliation. And we have to talk about Canada plotting a massive hit back on a US auto giant Tesla, whose sales are already collapsing. Krista Freeland, who's standing for elections, she has pledged the unthinkable. She wants to impose a 100% tariff on Tesla vehicles sold in the country. On her plan alone, it makes a lot of sense. Canada is the biggest single export market for the United States. Sure, you can ban alcohol and wine, but the golden child of the US economy is the automaker Tesla. Now, we have talked a lot about Canada's dependency on the US market. That part is crystal clear. But many of us don't really appreciate how the reverse is also true. The US sells a lot of expensive goods to their neighbors up north. Over 62% of all Canadian imports comes from the US. It's huge leverage when dealing with Donald Trump. He has said that the tariffs will bring back jobs and make America rich again. But if Canada decides they have nothing left to lose and hits the US auto industry, this could lead to a collapse, not just in auto sales, but in employment as well, basically mass layoffs. In his speech to Congress, Trump has once again confirmed he will punish everyone, not just China, but the global economy. No one is exempt on this season of The Apprentice.
If you don't make your product in America, however, under the Trump administration, you will pay a tariff, and in some cases, a rather large one. Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries. On average, the European Union, China, Brazil, India, Mexico, and Canada, have you heard of them? And countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair. April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs kick in. And whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them. That's reciprocal, back and forth. Whatever they tax us, we will tax them.
Now, while it's true that Canadians have patience, any country with self-respect will eventually crack. Trump recognizes strength, and if you don't push back, it's a sign that you have no bargaining power. It's why major powers like China has vowed to fight until the bitter end, and those are their own words. What's interesting is how even Canada is starting to hit back. The province of Ontario is starting to hammer on US contracts tied to the companies of Elon Musk.
Also, starting today, all U.S.-based companies will be banned from taking part in government procurement. Every year, the province and its agencies spend about $30 billion on procurement, alongside our more than $200 billion plan to build infrastructure. As part of this government-wide procurement ban, we're going one step further. We're ripping up Ontario's contract with Starlink. It's done, it's gone. We won't award contracts to people who enable and encourage economic attacks on our province and our country.
This is a big departure from the usual let's wait and see and let's hope and pray approach. If contracts with Starlink gets ripped apart, other US companies could see their business dealings with Canada get cancelled as well. Now, firstly, Tesla is in tremendous trouble globally. Their Q4 results are out and it's horrifying. There's a reason why the share price has collapsed by almost 20%, 30%. And if you're holding Tesla stock, Trump's trade war might just worsen things. In Q4, Tesla earned $2.3 billion in net income on $25.7 billion in revenue. So their overall profit margins are less than 10%. And this resulted in a 70% crash in their income. Tesla will not be able to endure a 25% tariff from Canada, much less a 100% tariff from Freeland if she becomes Prime Minister. Elon is about to face a reckoning from up north. There are very few US auto companies that can compete globally. Despite Tesla's big price tag, they are still surviving, but past a certain point, consumers will refuse to pay for one. And here's how significant Canada's market is for the automaker. In 2023, Canada bought over 50,000 Tesla EVs, and a large part of the demand was driven by government subsidies. The Model Y alone is the biggest bestseller in the entire Canadian market. And here's the shocker: Tesla doesn't have a manufacturing site in the country. Every single EV is imported into Canada from their factories, mostly in the United States or China. So Elon Musk is going to feel the squeeze. Either he loses the entire market up north, or he uproots some facilities and he builds cars in Canada. And in a twist of fate, that is going to deindustrialize the US auto sector. And it would be unthinkable for Trump to allow that. Now, I know what you're saying. Well, Elon can always make more cars in China and ship it over. But let's have a quick history lesson here. In 2024, the Biden White House decided to punish Chinese EVs. As a result, Justin Trudeau decided to follow the Americans, which, to be honest, isn't exactly the smartest thing to do. Canada still has a 100% tariff on Chinese EVs. In other words, electric vehicles produced in China and imported into Canada will face a 100% import tax. It's really silly, but in the case of Tesla, it's a double whammy for Elon Musk. There's no backdoor to make cars in Chinese factories and then ship them all the way to Ottawa. Making them in the US or China will be useless. Trump's trade war is about to backfire on his buddy's company. Now, I guess Elon has made too many jokes on Canada and finally it's hitting his bottom line. But let's be serious about the future of America's auto industry. When it comes to international exposure, only Tesla can be said to be truly global, truly international. Ford and GM, they don't even register outside of the US. And because of the trade war, cars sold within the US market are about to be a lot more expensive. Thanks to Trump's tariffs, car prices in the US could rise up by up to $12,000 a vehicle. That alone could put a ton of vehicles out of reach for US consumers. When you slap a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada, plus a 10% levy on Chinese imports, you jack the price of everything up. Not just cars coming into the US, but the inputs needed for your own domestic auto factories as well. This is an own goal by the Trump White House. Large SUVs would increase by nearly 9 grand. And if you want to buy a new pickup, well, you'll have to pay $8,000 more. Now, I don't know about you, but that increase is enough to turn off a ton of households from buying a new car. That is going to wreck every automaker in the US, including Tesla. And this is the consequence of a trade war. When you slap steel and aluminum tariffs, you best prepare for the price of production to rise. And as we established before, the margins for Tesla vehicles are becoming razor thin. Building a Tesla vehicle requires a lot of aluminum, 190 kilograms or over 400 pounds to be exact. Even the battery itself requires some amount of the metal as well. If aluminum prices rise by say 25%, the cost of making a Tesla goes up as well. It's basic cause and effect. When Trump imposed his tariffs, he probably didn't see the second order effects. He was too focused on how much revenue he can squeeze from US consumers and not the reality of US supply chains. Now, where do US automakers get their aluminum from? Well, the majority comes from Canada, almost 60% of total US consumption. In 2024, the US bought 2.7 million tons of aluminum from Canada, and this is helping to support over 700,000 jobs in the American metals industry. Remember, it isn't Canada restricting aluminum to the US. This isn't an export card like China, but a tariff from the US itself. There's no way for Trump to find another alternative supplier, so American importers, the companies, Tesla, will be forced to eat the tariffs. There will be two disastrous effects to the US auto industry. Now, firstly, domestic sales will face big headwinds. They might even collapse. Secondly, you can forget about exporting to the global market. Trump's dream of exporting US cars won't come true. It will remain an illusion. If Tesla loses the Canadian market and their cost of production goes up, How can they compete with Chinese EVs around the world? Simply put, they can't. Even making cars in China won't save Tesla. Their monthly output in Chinese factories fell to a new low in 2.5 years. Deliveries went from 70,000 cars monthly to just over 30k. That's more than a 50% drop. That's a total collapse in demand even before Trump began his tariff war. This is despite making cars in the Chinese ecosystem, which is leagues ahead of US manufacturing. But competition from brands like BYD is just too fierce. Now, there are so many numbers I can point to, but let me use a very simple argument. Even a child will understand this. By imposing global tariffs, Trump is going to hammer revenues of countries from Canada all the way to China. And when people lose their jobs, they become broke and they become angry. They won't have enough money to buy Tesla. Even if it comes out of a Chinese factory, that's not the point anymore. And when people eventually recover, when their pocketbooks recover, do you think they will buy a US made car going forward? And that's why we are beginning to see the Trump White House crack. We have the Commerce Secretary secretly begging Trump for tariff relief under the USMCA compliance umbrella. And guess what? Hours later, Trump actually delayed their tariffs on Canadian and Mexican autos. The leaders of Ford, GM, and Stellantis, they begged Trump to make a U-turn, which reminds us of how fragile US supply chains truly are, especially in the auto sector. So the Trump White House had to take a very big step back or risk an implosion. But don't get your hopes up. Even if Canada gets an exemption, Trump still has a nasty surprise. Reciprocal tariffs that target VAT or national sales tax are still on the table.
He will be addressing all of those products in Canada. The fact that, Canada has a national sales tax. Another way to say it is a national tariff on our products. And we sell, they import from us very little, and we export. And they export to us huge amounts. So the idea is that's going to be reset, but that starts April 2nd. Trade policy on April 2nd. You've got China's got huge tariffs on us, huge tariffs on everything with us. And Canada, you just talked about. Why do we produce cars in Canada? They've had an invitation, Canada and Mexico had an invitation to trade with the amazing economy of the United States of America, and they have abused that invitation, and the president's going to reset that, but that's April 2nd.
Now, trade wars are senseless. You're trying to go against the natural order of global supply chains. You create chaos and destruction to have things your way, but this isn't Burger King. And if the world decides to retaliate on US imports, many fragile industries in the US could face collapse. And as mighty and as big as Tesla might seem, they are operating on the goodwill of many consumers around the world. And I won't be surprised if Canada imposed a nasty tax on Tesla imports if things get dicey enough. But as always, let me know what you think. Will Canada really punish Tesla cars? And will the US finally take a step back? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.